The champagne glass shattered like a gunshot against the white marble floor of the sapphire room, golden liquid spreading across the pristine surface in a pool that reflected the crystal chandeliers above. Solani stumbled backward, her arms windmilling as Heather's second shove sent her careening toward the terrace edge overlooking Wacker Drive. The Chicago wind howled through the open doors, 20 stories of empty air waiting just beyond the velvet ropes. "Look at what you've done, you clumsy girl!" Heather's voice cut through the jazz quartet like a serrated blade, her words dripping with venom that could kill at 20 paces. Solani caught herself on the marble balustrade, her knuckles white against the cold stone. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply straightened, brushing champagne droplets from her black apron with hands that had steadied themselves in far more dangerous situations than this. "You pushed me, ma'am," Solani said, her voice calm as still water, her dark eyes meeting Heather's without flinching. In the world she shared with Kyung-ho, she had looked down the barrels of guns held by men who killed for sport. A socialite's tantrum was nothing. "I did no such thing!" Heather shrieked, her face flushing red beneath her professionally applied makeup. She took a step forward, her Valentino heels clicking against the marble like a judge's gavel. "You were in my way. Do you know how much this dress costs? Dior, Fall 2025, collection, $47,000. That's more than you make in a year, sweetheart." The tech billionaire's gala had been in full swing for 2 hours. See, the Sapphire Room, named for the blue Swarovski crystals embedded in its vaulted ceiling, was Chicago's most exclusive event space, perched atop the Sinclair Tower like a crown jewel. 300 of the city's elite mingled beneath imported French chandeliers, sipping vintage Cristal, while a string quartet played Vivaldi. The Christmas decorations sparkled with 1,000,000 tiny lights, each one probably worth more than Solani's first car. But Solani hadn't come for the glamour. She'd come because she was a woman who valued perspective, who never wanted to forget what it felt like to work, to serve, to see the world from the ground floor. "The wind in Chicago is biting tonight, Solani," Kyung-ho had told her that morning, his low melodic rasp washing over her as she buttoned her uniform in their penthouse 3 blocks away. He'd stood behind her, his reflection in the mirror showing concern in his dark eyes. "Stay home, let me spoil you. You don't need to work anymore." But Solani had laughed, turning to kiss his jaw. "If I forget what it's like to work, I'll forget who I am, Kyung-ho. I'm not just your fiancé, I'm still me." He'd cupped her face in his hands, those same hands that had signed death warrants and billion-dollar deals with equal ease. "You could never be anyone but yourself. That's why I love you." Now, standing in the Sapphire Room, with champagne soaking through her apron and Heather's contempt radiating like heat, Solani wondered if she should have listened to him. Heather belonged to Chicago's Gold Coast aristocracy, the kind of woman whose entire identity was built on the fragile foundation of her father's real estate empire. Bartholomew Henderson's name opened doors from the Magnificent Mile to the North Shore. His daughter had never worked a day in her life, never questioned whether she'd eat that week, never slept anywhere that didn't have heated floors and a doorman. The party was a sea of champagne and ego, designer labels and inherited wealth. Solani had been carrying a tray of vintage Cristal, $800 bottles that guests grabbed without looking, without thanking her, when she'd felt the first shove. Sharp, intentional, designed to humiliate. She'd managed to keep her balance, but the glasses had toppled, 3 of them crashing to the floor in a symphony of destruction that made the nearby conversations stop mid-sentence. And now Heather was closing in for the kill. "People like you," Heather said, her voice dropping to a stage whisper that carried perfectly to the front row of onlookers, "are a stain on a night like this. You don't belong here. You never will. This is our world, and you're just passing through it, serving us, cleaning up after us, hoping for tips." The security guards, 3 off-duty Chicago PD officers hired for the night, stood frozen near the coat check. Their eyes tracked the confrontation, but their feet didn't move. They recognized Heather Henderson. Her father donated to the Police Benevolent Fund. He had the mayor's personal cell phone number. They didn't recognize Solani. "I think you should leave," Heather continued, reaching out to poke Solani in the shoulder with one manicured finger. Before I have you arrested for assault. Yes, that's right. You assaulted me. All these witnesses saw it. You came at me. All aggressive, threatening. I had to defend myself. Solani looked at the growing crowd. Some faces showed discomfort. Most showed indifference. A few showed that particular brand of cruel entertainment that came from watching someone else's humiliation unfold like performance art. No one was going to help her. No one ever did. Except she wasn't the woman they thought she was. Solani reached into her apron pocket, her fingers closing around the small encrypted burner phone that Kyung-ho had given her on their 6-month anniversary. It was sleek, black, expensive, in a way that didn't advertise itself. The kind of phone that couldn't be traced, couldn't be hacked, couldn't be intercepted. For emergencies, he'd said, sliding it across their breakfast table. If you ever need me, if anyone ever makes you feel unsafe, you send me this symbol. He'd shown her the Korean character on a piece of paper. Shi, eclipse. And then what happens? She'd asked, laughing, thinking it was sweet but unnecessary. Kyung-ho hadn't laughed. Then I come. And whoever made you feel that way learns that some mistakes don't get second chances. Now, with Heather leaning in close enough that Solani could smell her Chanel No. 5 perfume mixed with champagne and malice, Solani unlocked the phone with her thumbprint. She typed the single character, she sent. The message disappeared into the encrypted void, traveling through servers in 3 countries before landing in Kyung-ho's pocket, 16 blocks away. Heather didn't notice. She was too busy enjoying her moment of power, and too drunk on her own importance to see the shift happening in real time. Get out, Heather said, giving Zolani one final shove toward the exit. This time Zolani let herself stumble, let herself fall to one knee on the cold marble. Before I have you arrested for assault. The atmosphere in the Sapphire Room changed instantly. It was subtle at first, a drop in temperature that had nothing to do with the Chicago wind. Conversations faltered. The string quartet's violins wavered. Someone near the bar dropped a glass. The heavy oak doors of the Sapphire Room, the ones that required 2 security guards to open, swung inward with enough force to bang against the walls. It wasn't the police. 6 men entered in perfect formation, their movements synchronized with military precision. They wore charcoal gray suits that fit too well to be off the rack, each one tailored to accommodate the weapons that surely rested in shoulder holsters beneath the fabric. Their faces were impassive, professional, the kind of blank expression that came from years of doing things most people couldn't stomach. At the center of the formation was Park Kyung-ho. Solani's breath caught. He wasn't wearing his usual corporate glasses, the ones that made him look like just another venture capitalist prowling for the next unicorn startup. His eyes were cold, predatory, darting across the room with the focused intensity of an apex predator that had just caught the scent of blood. Those eyes landed on Zolani, on her damp apron, on the red mark blooming on her shoulder where Heather had shoved her, on the glass shards scattered around her knees, seen on the champagne soaking through her uniform. His jaw tightened. The temperature dropped another 10 degrees. Kyung-ho moved through the crowd like a knife through silk, his men forming a protective V formation that made people instinctively step back. No one spoke. No one dared. The tech billionaire, whose party this was, a man worth $8 billion, who regularly appeared on Forbes covers, pressed himself against the wall to let Kyung-ho pass. Heather, oblivious to the predator that had just entered her hunting ground, whirled around with her hand on her hip. She recognized him instantly, the mysterious billionaire everyone wanted to pitch to, the venture capitalist whose fund had returned 4,000% to early investors, the man whose name appeared in business journals, but whose face rarely appeared in photographs. Mr. Park Kyung-ho? Heather cooed, her voice shifting from vicious to syrupy in half a second. She placed a hand on his arm, her red nails bright against his charcoal sleeve. I am so sorry you had to witness this scene. This waitress is completely unstable. She just tried to attack me. She dropped expensive champagne, made a scene, and when I asked her to leave, she became aggressive. I had to defend myself. Kyung-ho looked down at Heather's hand on his sleeve. He stared at it the way someone might stare at a poisonous spider that had just crawled onto their skin, with absolute disgust and the calculation of exactly how to remove the threat. He didn't speak to her. He didn't acknowledge her at all. He simply walked past her, his shoulder making contact with hers, just hard enough to knock her off balance. His men followed, and as they did, they formed a wall of bodies that physically pushed Heather backward into the buffet table. A mirror image of what she had done to Zolani, except executed with the precision of a military operation. Heather crashed into the table. Shrimp cocktails went flying. A tower of champagne glasses toppled. Caviar splattered across her $47,000 Dior dress in a pattern that looked like abstract art. Kyung-ho reached Zolani. He crouched down, his expensive Italian shoes creaking slightly as he lowered himself to her level. Up close, she could see the rage burning behind his controlled expression, the way his hands trembled slightly before he steadied them. He took off his bespoke overcoat, Brini, custom-made, worth more than most people's cars, and wrapped it around her shoulders. The silk lining was still warm from his body heat. It smelled like his cologne, like safety, like home. "Did she touch you?" Kyung-ho asked. His voice was soft, barely above a whisper, but in the absolute silence of the sapphire room, it echoed like thunder. Every person in that space heard him. Every person understood that something had shifted, that the power dynamic had just inverted so completely that reality itself seemed to bend. Zolani looked up at him, at this man who had found her broken and helped her rebuild, at this man who saw her worth when she couldn't see it herself, at this man who had asked her to stay home tonight because he knew, somehow he always knew, that the world wasn't safe for people with soft hearts and strong spines. "She thought I was just a waitress," Zolani whispered. Kyung-ho's expression didn't change, but something dark flickered behind his eyes. Something that made the 6 men in charcoal suits stand straighter, made them rest their hands casually on their hips where their weapons waited. He stood, pulling Zolani up with him, keeping her wrapped in his coat. He turned slowly, deliberately, until his gaze landed on Heather. She was still sprawling against the buffet table, caviar dripping from her dress, her perfect hair disheveled. But she was smiling, that particular smile that came from a lifetime of having Daddy fix her problems. Behind her, a man in his 60s was pushing through the crowd. Bartholomew Henderson, real estate mogul, Gold Coast royalty, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than the average Chicago teacher made in 6 months. "Kyung-ho," Bartholomew called out, his voice booming with false confidence. "My friend, what a surprise to see you here. I didn't know you were attending Marcus's little tech gathering." Kyung-ho didn't respond. He simply stared at Bartholomew with the same cold calculation he'd used on Heather's hand. The message was clear. "I'm not your friend. I've never been your friend. And you're about to learn exactly what that means." Before we dive into how Heather just sealed her fate, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from right now. Are you Team Zolani, or do you think revenge goes too far? And if you haven't subscribed to my Afro-Korean boss stories yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button, or tell me in the comments why you're hesitating. I genuinely want to know. Now, let's see how this evening of luxury turned into Heather's worst nightmare. Bartholomew Henderson reached his daughter, pulling her upright with more force than gentleness. His eyes darted between Kyung-ho and Zolani, doing the math, trying to figure out how this had become his problem. "Heather, what did you do?" he hissed under his breath. But the acoustics of the sapphire room were designed for classical music, which meant they carried whispers like megaphones. "I didn't do anything," Heather protested, wiping caviar from her dress with shaking hands. "That waitress attacked me, and when I defended myself, these thugs assaulted me." The word hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Thugs! Kyung-ho's 6 men didn't move, but the quality of their stillness changed. They went from watchful to predatory in the space between heartbeats. Kyung-ho raised one hand, a simple gesture, fingers splayed, and his men relaxed. Marginally. "Mr. Henderson," Kyung-ho said, his voice still soft, still controlled, but carrying an edge that could cut diamond. "Your daughter just put her hands on my fiancé. Twice. Once might be an accident. Twice is a choice. She shoved her. She verbally abused her. She threatened to have her arrested for a crime that exists only in her imagination." Fiancé. The word rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Heads swiveled towards Zolani, really seeing her for the first time. Not a waitress. Not part of the hired help. The future Mrs. Park Kyung-ho. The woman who would share a life with one of the most powerful and most terrifying men in Chicago's underground. Heather's face went from red to white in 3 seconds. She's with you? Heather's voice came out strangled, disbelieving. Zolani felt Kyung-ho's arm tighten around her waist, anchoring her to him. She leaned into his warmth, into his strength, feeling the tremors that still ran through her body. Not from fear, from something older, something deeper. Memory. She'd been shoved before, pushed, told she was worthless, told she was a stain, 6 years ago, by a man who was supposed to love her. I need to leave, Zolani whispered to Kyung-ho, her voice cracking despite her best efforts. I can't. We're leaving, Kyung-ho said immediately. He didn't ask questions, didn't push. He simply guided her toward the exit, his men forming a protective circle that moved with them like a living shield. Behind them, Bartholomew's voice rose. Kyung-ho, please, let's talk about this. My daughter made a mistake. She didn't know. Let me make this right. Kyung-ho paused at the doorway. He didn't turn around. You have until midnight tomorrow to liquidate your Seattle assets and transfer $3 million to the account number I'm about to send you. That's the protection debt you owe the syndicate. I was going to give you an extension. I was going to be generous. The silence was absolute. But your daughter just put her hands on the woman I love. In my world, Mr. Henderson, that's a debt that cannot be paid in cash alone. Then they were through the doors, into the elevator, descending 20 stories, while Zolani's world spun like a broken carousel. The penthouse was dark when they arrived, only the Chicago skyline providing illumination through floor-to-ceiling windows. Kyung-ho didn't turn on the lights. He simply guided Zolani to the leather couch overlooking the city and sat beside her, close enough to touch but giving her space to breathe. For long minutes, neither spoke. Zolani stared at the lights of Chicago, millions of them, each one representing a life, a story, a struggle she'd never know. Somewhere out there, in one of those buildings, she'd slept in her car 6 years ago. Somewhere out there, she'd lost everything that mattered. Tell me, Kyung-ho said finally. Not a command, an invitation. Zolani's hands were shaking. She pressed them together in her lap, trying to still them, but they wouldn't obey. Kyung-ho covered them with his own, his warmth seeping into her cold fingers. You've never asked, she whispered. In the year we've been together, you've never asked about before. Because you weren't ready to tell me, Kyung-ho said simply, and I would wait a lifetime for you to be ready. But tonight something broke open. I saw it in your eyes when that woman pushed you. You weren't here. You were somewhere else, somewhere that hurt you. Zolani closed her eyes. The memories came flooding back, unstoppable as a dam break. His name was Marcus Chen, she began, her voice hollow. I met him 7 years ago when I was teaching English in Los Angeles. He was a businessman, or that's what he told me. Import-export. He had money, not rich, but comfortable. He was charming, funny. He said all the right things. Kyung-ho said nothing, just held her hands tighter. We dated for 2 years. He talked about marriage, about kids, about building a life together. I believed him. God, I believed every word. Her laugh was bitter. I was so stupid. You were trusting, Kyung-ho corrected gently. That's not the same as stupid. I got pregnant, Zolani continued, the words coming faster now, like poison she needed to purge. 6 years ago, March 15th. I remember the exact date because it was the happiest day of my life. I took 3 tests to be sure. I bought a little pair of baby shoes, yellow because we didn't know if it was a boy or girl yet. I was so excited. She could still see those shoes, perfect and tiny in her hands. I told Marcus that night over dinner. I'd made his favorite meal, kalbi, because he loved Korean food. I'd set up candles. I had the baby shoes in a gift box. I thought he'd be happy. He wasn't, Kyung-ho said, his voice tight. He smiled, Zolani said. That's what I remember most. He smiled and said congratulations, and asked me all the right questions. When was I due? Had I told anyone else? What did I want to name the baby? We talked for hours. We made plans. He kissed me goodnight and said he loved me. She paused, swallowing hard. The next morning, I woke up and he was gone. Not just out for breakfast. Gone. His clothes, his laptop, his documents, everything. Just erased. Like he'd never existed. Kyung-ho's jaw clenched so hard, she heard his teeth grind. He left a note on the kitchen counter. 3 sentences. I can still recite them word for word. I'm not ready for this responsibility. I'm liberating myself from a situation that doesn't serve my growth. Take care of yourself. And the money? Kyung-ho asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Gone. All of it. Solani's voice cracked. We had a joint account. I'd put my entire teaching salary savings in there. $47,000. It was supposed to be for our future, for a house down payment. He cleaned it out. Cease every cent, along with the $3,000 in my personal account, because I'd given him access in case of emergency. She felt Kyung-ho's rage radiating off him in waves, but his hands remained gentle on hers. I couldn't make rent on my apartment. I was a teacher. I made $38,000 a year before taxes. Without that savings, without Marcus's income, I had nothing. The landlord gave me 2 weeks. I used that time trying to find Marcus. I called his phone, disconnected. I went to his office. The business didn't exist. The address was a UPS store. I filed a police report. They said it was a civil matter, not criminal. They couldn't help me. Zolani's voice had gone flat, mechanical, the way it did when recounting trauma too big to feel. I lost the apartment. I'd already paid that month's tuition for the private school where I taught. And they don't refund. So I had about $800 to my name, a car, a 2009 Honda Civic, and a baby growing inside me. I thought I could make it work. I'd sleep in the car until I saved enough for a new apartment. I'd find a cheaper school to teach at. I'd survive. You shouldn't have had to survive, Kyung-ho said, his voice low and dangerous. You should have been protected, cherished, cared for. I lost my teaching job 3 weeks later, Zolani continued, as if he hadn't spoken. I'd been throwing up every morning, morning sickness. I was exhausted all the time. I missed 2 days of work. The school had a strict attendance policy. They let me go. No severance. No recommendations. Just gone. She stared at her hands, at the massive diamond engagement ring Kyung-ho had given her 4 months ago. 3 carats, flawless. Worth more than Marcus had stolen. Worth more than everything she'd lost. I slept in my car for 2 months, October and November. Chicago gets cold in November, Kyung-ho. So cold. I'd park in different places every night. Walmart parking lots, 24-hour gym lots, side streets. I'd use gym bathrooms to wash up. I ate once a day, maybe. Whatever was cheapest. Ramen, gas station hot dogs. Sometimes I'd go to food banks, but I felt so guilty taking food from families when I was just one person. You were 2 people, Kyung-ho said fiercely. You and your baby. I was 6 months pregnant when it happened, Solani whispered. December 3rd. I was parked behind a Target. I'd worked a few shifts doing temp retail work, wrapping presents for last-minute shoppers, $10 an hour. I'd made enough for actual dinner, chicken sandwich and fries. I was eating in my car, and I felt wrong. Cramping. Bad cramping. Kyung-ho pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her as if he could shield her from the memory. I drove myself to the emergency room. I walked in and collapsed in the waiting area. There was blood, so much blood. The nurses, they were kind. They got me into a bed immediately. But it was too late. The stress, the malnutrition, the cold, the sleeping in a car. My body couldn't sustain a pregnancy. I was miscarrying. A sob broke through Zolani's careful control. Just one, but it opened the floodgates. I lost my baby in a county hospital charity ward, she cried. Alone. No family. They're all back in South Africa. I couldn't afford to call them. No friends. I'd lost touch with everyone when I moved. No Marcus. The man who'd put that baby inside me didn't even know I was losing it. I woke up from the emergency procedure, and a social worker was sitting next to my bed, asking me if I had insurance. I didn't. I had nothing. They did the procedure anyway. They had to. I was hemorrhaging. But the bill was $14,000. For losing my baby, I got billed $14,000 for the worst day of my life. Kyung-ho was shaking now, his whole body vibrating with controlled fury. But his voice remained soft when he spoke. Where is he now? Marcus Chen. Where is he? I don't know, Zolani said. I never found him. After I got out of the hospital, I had nowhere to go. The hospital social worker helped me get into a women's shelter. I stayed there for 6 weeks. Then I moved to a shared apartment with 4 other women. We each had a corner of the living room. I worked 3 jobs: waitress, dog walker, overnight stock clerk at Target. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. It took me 4 years to save enough money to leave Chicago, 4 years to pay off that medical debt, 4 years to rebuild myself from nothing. I decided to start over somewhere new. Somewhere Marcus couldn't find me even if he tried. Somewhere I could be free. Korea, Kyung-ho said. Korea, Zolani confirmed. I'd always loved Korean culture. The food, the language, the respect for hard work. I used the last of my savings to buy a plane ticket to Seoul. I got a job teaching English at a hagwon. I lived in a tiny goshiwon, a room the size of a closet. But it was mine. It was clean. It was safe. And slowly, so slowly, I started to heal. She turned to look at Kyung-ho. Really look at him. And this man who had somehow seen past her scars to the woman beneath. I met you a year ago, she said softly. I was waitressing at that private restaurant in Gangnam, working a second job to save for a bigger apartment. You came in with your business associates. Everyone was terrified of you. The manager told us to be perfect, to not make eye contact, to not speak unless spoken to. That's Park Kyung-ho, he said. He owns half of Seoul. Don't mess this up. A ghost of a smile crossed Kyung-ho's face. But you brought me the wrong wine, he said. I brought you the right wine, Zolani corrected. You'd ordered the 2015 Burgundy, but I could tell from the menu you were ordering that you actually wanted the 2012. The 2015 is sweeter. It would have clashed with the beef course. So I brought you the 2012 and apologized for the mistake. And I knew immediately that you were smarter than everyone else in that room combined, Kyung-ho said, including me. You asked me to sit down. Your associates looked horrified, but you dismissed them and asked me about wine. We talked for 2 hours. You never once made me feel like the help. You asked my opinions. You listened. You saw me. I saw everything, Kyung-ho said fiercely. I saw your strength, your grace, your intelligence, your survivor's heart. I saw a woman who had been beaten down by life and had gotten back up. I saw a queen. You asked me to dinner the next day, Zolani continued. Then dinner the next day, then dinner every day for a month. You never pushed, never demanded. You just showed up. You learned Zulu phrases to make me laugh. You found South African restaurants in Seoul. You asked about my dreams, my fears, my past. And when I finally told you about Marcus, about what he did, you held me exactly like you're holding me now and said, he was a fool, and you are mine now. No one will ever hurt you again. I meant it, Kyung-ho said. I mean it. 6 months later, you proposed. In that tiny goshiwon room I was still living in because I was too proud to let you pay for a bigger place. You got down on one knee in a space the size of a bathroom and said, marry me. Not because I can give you wealth or safety or comfort, though I will give you all of those things, but because you make me want to be a better man. You make me believe in something other than power and fear. You make me feel human. Zolani touched the ring on her finger. The one that caught every light in Chicago and threw it back multiplied. I said yes because you never tried to save me. You never treated me like I was broken. You just loved me, exactly as I was. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her story settling between them like a living thing. Tonight, Zolani said quietly, when that woman shoved me, I was back in that hospital, back in that car, back in every moment where someone told me I was worthless. where someone treated me like trash, where someone decided my pain didn't matter. It matters, Kyung-ho said, his voice rough with emotion. Your pain matters. Your survival matters. You matter. And that woman, that spoiled, cruel woman who thinks her father's money makes her untouchable, she's going to learn that some people in this world are protected. Some people are cherished. Some people are queens. He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. I love you, Zolani. I love your strength and your softness and your stubbornness. I love that you insisted on working tonight, even though I begged you to stay home. I love that you still see yourself as that teacher from Los Angeles when the rest of the world sees the woman who brought Park Kyung-ho to his knees. I don't want revenge, Zolani said, though even as the words left her mouth, she wasn't sure they were true. I just want to be free. Free from the fear that someone will push me again and I'll fall. Free from the voice in my head that says, I deserved what Marcus did to me. Free from feeling like I'm still that girl sleeping in her car. Then I'll give you freedom, Kyung-ho promised. But first, I'm going to show that woman and her father what it costs to touch what's mine. Not because I'm cruel, but because in my world there are rules. And the first rule is this: you don't hurt the innocent, you don't prey on the weak, and you sure as hell don't put your hands on Park Kyung-ho's queen. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Gentle kisses that tasted like promises, and fury held in check. Rest now, he murmured. Tomorrow we handle this. Tonight, you're safe. You're home. You're mine. Zolani closed her eyes and let herself believe him. For the first time in 6 years, she felt truly safe. But in the back of her mind, she could still see Heather's face, twisted with contempt. Could still hear those words, people like you are a stain. And she wondered if safety was enough, or if what she really wanted was justice. If Zolani's story is hitting you right in the feels, hit that like button right now and subscribe to my Afro-Korean boss stories. Drop a comment predicting what Kyung-ho is about to do to Heather. Will he go too far or not far enough? If you're not subscribing, I need to know why. Tell me in the comments what's holding you back, because your support keeps these stories coming. Now let's see how a Korean syndicate boss handles a Gold Coast Karen. The sun rose over Chicago like a judge taking the bench, cold and impartial. In the penthouse 3 blocks from the Sapphire Room, Zolani woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Kyung-ho's voice speaking rapid Korean in the next room. She lay still for a moment, wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets that cost more than her first month's rent in Los Angeles, staring at the ceiling. Her body ached, not from Heather's shoves, but from the weight of memory. She'd cried herself to sleep in Kyung-ho's arms, something she hadn't done since those first weeks in the women's shelter. But this morning, something felt different. She felt lighter. Telling the story, finally speaking the words she'd kept locked inside for 6 years, had released something. The shame, maybe. Or the fear that if she said it out loud, it would become real all over again. It was already real. It had always been real. But now Kyung-ho knew. And he hadn't looked at her with pity. He'd looked at her with rage on her behalf, with the kind of protective fury that said someone finally cared enough to be angry that she'd been hurt. She got out of bed and padded barefoot to the door, wearing one of Kyung-ho's shirts that fell to her knees. Through the crack, she could see him standing by the windows, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in that cold, clipped tone he used for business. Every permit for the Seattle development, rejected. The environmental impact study, have it flagged. I don't care if you have to write it yourself. Find something wrong with it. A pause. The Los Angeles project is further along, so hit it financially. Freeze the construction loans. I own shares in 3 of his creditor banks. Call in the favors. I want him bleeding money by Monday. Another pause. Longer this time. And the daughter? Heather Henderson? Pull her credit history. Find out where she works, who she dates, what charities she's on the board of. I want a complete profile by noon. His voice dropped lower, more dangerous. Most importantly, find out if she has a pattern. Other staff members she's assaulted. Other people she's humiliated. If she's done this before, I want names and statements. Zolani pushed the door open. Kyung-ho turned immediately, his expression softening the moment he saw her. I'll call you back, he said into the phone, then hung up without waiting for a response. You're going after them, Zolani said. not a question. I'm going to dismantle them, Kyung-ho corrected. Systematically, publicly, permanently. Kyung-ho, no. He crossed to her in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms. You don't get to talk me out of this. That woman put her hands on you. She humiliated you in front of hundreds of people. She threatened to have you arrested for defending yourself. And her father, that pompous fool, owes my organization $3 million and thinks his connections will save him. I just want to move on, Solani said. But even she could hear the lack of conviction in her voice. You can move on, Kyung-ho said gently. That's your right. You can heal and grow and never think about them again. But I can't. Because in my world, there are rules. And when someone breaks those rules, when they hurt someone I love, there are consequences. He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. You asked me once why people fear me, why business owners pay protection money, why politicians return my calls, why the police look the other way. His thumb traced her cheekbone. It's because I keep my word, always. When I promise safety, I deliver it. When I promise consequences, I deliver those too. If I let this slide, if I let some spoiled socialite assault my fiancé without repercussions, then everyone in this city learns that I'm weak, that love makes me soft, that they can hurt you and walk away. I don't want you to become something you're not because of me, Zolani whispered. Kyung-ho laughed, but there was no humor in it. My love, I was this person long before I met you. I've ordered worse things done for lesser offenses. The only difference is that this time it's personal. This time, I care. Before Zolani could respond, Kyung-ho's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and a cold smile crossed his face. They're here. The restaurant was called Mingles, a 3-Michelin star establishment in the heart of the Loop that Kyung-ho owned through a shell corporation. And it wasn't open for lunch, hadn't been for 3 months due to renovations. But today, it was hosting a very private meeting. Bartholomew Henderson arrived at exactly noon, flanked by his lawyer and his daughter. Heather looked different in daylight, smaller somehow, her expensive clothes unable to hide the fear in her eyes. She'd seen the news this morning. Her father's Seattle project had been shut down by the EPA. His Los Angeles construction loans had been mysteriously frozen. 3 Chicago City Council members had publicly condemned his business practices, citing unnamed sources about shady dealings. In 12 hours, Bartholomew had watched his empire start to crumble, and he knew exactly who was holding the sledgehammer. Kyung-ho sat at a table in the center of the empty restaurant, Solani beside him. He'd insisted she come, though she'd tried to refuse. You don't have to face them, he'd said, but I think you might want to. He'd been right. Seeing them walk through those doors, seeing Bartholomew's desperation and Heather's terror, Zolani felt something shift inside her chest. Power, control. The tables turning so completely that the spin made her dizzy. Mr. Henderson, Kyung-ho said, not standing, not offering his hand. Heather, please sit. It wasn't an invitation. It was a command. They sat. Bartholomew's lawyer, a man in his 50s with silver hair and a Rolex, started to speak, but Kyung-ho raised one finger and the man fell silent. Let's establish some ground rules, Kyung-ho said, his voice conversational, almost pleasant. First, only principals speak at this table. Your lawyer is here to witness and advise, not to negotiate. Second, everything said here stays here. No recordings, no notes, no repeating our conversation to the press or police. Third, you will listen until I'm finished speaking, and then you may respond. Understood? Bartholomew nodded stiffly. Heather looked like she might vomit. Good. Kyung-ho leaned back in his chair, one arm draped casually over the back of Solani's seat. Now, let's discuss what happened last night. Heather, you physically assaulted my fiancé, twice. You verbally abused her. You threatened her with false arrest. You did all of this in front of 300 witnesses because you believed, quite correctly until last night, that you were untouchable, that your father's money and connections would protect you from any consequences. I didn't know, Heather started, but Kyung-ho cut her off with a look. I'm not finished. His voice dropped 10 degrees. After you assaulted Zolani, my team did some research. Very thorough research. Would you like to know what we found? Heather shrank in her chair. Her father's face had gone gray. We found 4 other incidents, Kyung-ho continued. 4 other service workers you've assaulted over the past 3 years. A valet in 2023, who you slapped because he brought your car around too slowly. A waitress in 2024, who you shoved into a wall because she forgot your extra lemon. A coat check girl last month, who you hit with your purse because she couldn't find your jacket fast enough. And a housekeeper, your family's housekeeper, who quit after you threw a wine glass at her head. Those were all. Heather tried again. Mistakes? Kyung-ho's eyebrows rose. Misunderstandings? That's what your father's lawyers called them when they paid settlements to make the stories go away. $10,000 here. $25,000 there. Always just enough to buy silence, never enough to make headlines. He pulled a folder from beneath the table and slid it across to Bartholomew. Those are sworn statements from all 4 victims. They've agreed to go public. I've also arranged for several news organizations to run stories about the pattern of abuse. By tonight, Heather Henderson will be trending on every social media platform as Chicago's most entitled socialite. You can't, Bartholomew started. I can, Kyung-ho interrupted, and I will, unless we come to an understanding. What do you want? Bartholomew asked, his voice hoarse. First, the $3 million you owe the syndicate. Wired to our account by 5 p.m. today. No extensions. No negotiations. Bartholomew nodded. Done. Second, you will sell your Chicago properties. All of them. I don't care who you sell them to, but you will be out of this city's real estate market within 90 days. That's my life's work, Bartholomew protested. That's what you should have considered before raising a daughter who assaults people for sport, Kyung-ho said coldly. Seattle is already shut down. Los Angeles is bleeding money. Chicago is all you have left, and I'm giving you the courtesy of an organized retreat instead of a total collapse. Take the offer. Bartholomew looked at his lawyer, who gave a subtle nod. What choice did he have? Fine, Bartholomew said bitterly. What else? Your daughter will make a public apology, not some vague statement released through PR. A real apology, on camera. To Zolani specifically, and to every service worker she's ever abused. It will run on 3 news networks and be posted to her social media accounts. Heather's face crumpled. Please, no, I'll be ruined. You should be ruined, Kyung-ho said flatly. You've been ruining other people's days, their sense of safety, their dignity for years. Now you get to experience what it feels like to be humiliated publicly. Consider it a learning opportunity. Is there anything else? Bartholomew asked, his voice resigned. Kyung-ho glanced at Zolani. She'd been silent throughout the meeting, but now she leaned forward slightly, her voice soft but clear. I want to know why, she said to Heather. I want to know what I did that made you think it was okay to treat me that way. Heather stared at her hands, tears streaming down her face. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. You didn't do anything. I was having a bad night. My fiancé told me he wanted to postpone the wedding. My father was angry with me about spending too much money. I was drinking. And then you were there, and you were just there. Easy. Available. Someone I could take my anger out on who couldn't fight back. Because I was a waitress, Zolani said. Because I thought you were just a waitress, Heather admitted. Someone who didn't matter. Someone who wouldn't have powerful friends or the ability to defend herself. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're sorry because you got caught, Zolani said. Not because you hurt me. If I'd been alone last night, if Kyung-ho hadn't shown up, you would have gone home and forgotten about me by morning. You would have told your friends about the clumsy waitress who ruined your dress, and you would have laughed. Heather didn't deny it. Zolani stood, Kyung-ho rising with her. I accept your apology, Zolani said. Not because you deserve my forgiveness, but because I deserve peace. I'm going to walk out of here and never think about you again. You're going to walk out of here and spend the rest of your life knowing that you treated someone like garbage and it cost you everything. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, Heather. The next time you see a waitress or a janitor or a valet or anyone you think is beneath you, remember this moment. Remember that you never know who someone really is. You never know who they love. You never know who loves them. And you never know what they're capable of becoming. Then she walked out, on Kyung-ho's hand on the small of her back, leaving the Hendersons sitting in the empty restaurant with the ashes of their empire scattered around them. Outside, Chicago was brilliant with autumn sunshine. Zolani tilted her face up to the warmth, breathing deeply. "How do you feel?" Kyung-ho asked. Zolani thought about it. Really thought about it. "Free," she said finally. "I feel free." Kyung-ho smiled. A real smile, the kind he only gave her, and pulled her close. "Good," he murmured against her hair. "Because you are. You're free, you're mine, and you're never going to be afraid again." As they walked toward their waiting car, Zolani's phone buzzed. A news alert. Henderson real estate heir caught in abuse scandal. Multiple victims come forward. She deleted it without reading. She didn't need to read it. She'd already won. We're at the most intense part now. If you haven't hit subscribe on my Afro-Korean boss stories, do it now, or drop a comment explaining what's stopping you. Seriously, I want to understand. What do you think Heather deserves? Comment below with your judgment. Should Kyung-ho show mercy or finish the job? Keep watching because this story is about to take an even darker turn. The black SUV idled outside Mingle's, engine purring like a satisfied predator. Kyung-ho opened the door for Zolani, his hand steady on her waist as she climbed inside. The leather interior smelled like luxury and safety, but something was wrong. Kyung-ho paused before entering, his eyes scanning the street with practiced efficiency. His hand moved subtly toward his hip, where Zolani knew he kept a pistol. "What is it?" she asked. "Black van," he said quietly. Across the street. Doesn't belong to my fleet." Zolani followed his gaze and spotted it. A nondescript black van with dark windows, parked between a Honda and a delivery truck. The passenger window rolled down. The man inside was Asian, Korean, maybe 40, with a thick scar running through his right eyebrow. He wore a black suit and held a professional camera with a telephoto lens. He raised it deliberately, letting them see, then pressed the shutter. Once, twice, 3 times. "White crane," Kyung-ho breathed. The man lowered the camera and held up a tablet, turning it so they could see footage from last night. Zolani on the ground, Heather shoving her. Kyung-ho arriving, his face twisted with protective fury. The man tapped the screen, zooming in on Kyung-ho's vulnerable expression. Then he smiled. The window rolled up. The van roared to life and disappeared into traffic. "Get in," Kyung-ho commanded. Zolani obeyed. Kyung-ho slid beside her, barking orders in Korean to the driver and into his phone. "Track that vehicle. Get me Jin-soo. Tell him the white crane is in Chicago." He turned to Zolani, cupping her face. "Who are they?" she asked. "Rivals. Based in Seoul. We've had a truce for 5 years, but they've been looking to expand into Chicago." "And they just found their excuse," Zolani said. "They found what they think is a weakness," Kyung-ho corrected, scrolling through his phone. "The man with the scar is Choi Min-jun, White Crane's head of intelligence. If he's here personally, they're serious." "What will they do with those photos?" "Show the other families that I've gone soft. That love makes me weak." His jaw tightened. "Does it?" Zolani asked quietly. Kyung-ho looked at her. "Yes. You make me weak because I would burn this city before letting anyone hurt you. But you also make me stronger, because now I have something worth protecting." He kissed her forehead. "What are we going to do?" "Detroit," he said. "Neutral ground. If they want a meeting, that's where it'll happen." "A meeting about what?" "About territory. About whether they push into Chicago or we push back." He paused. "About whether they use you as leverage or whether I make it clear that anyone who touches you dies screaming." His phone buzzed. His expression hardened. Min-jun sent the photos to the 5 major families on the West Coast. By tonight, everyone will know Park Kyung-ho's fiancé was assaulted at a public event. "And the white crane?" "They'll test me." See if love made me sloppy. Make me choose between you and my empire. What will you choose? Zolani asked. You, Kyung-ho said without hesitation. Every time. But I'll do it in a way that shows choosing you doesn't make me weak. It makes me ruthless. The man with everything to lose and refuses to lose it? He's unstoppable. The SUV turned onto Lakeshore Drive. When do we leave? Zolani asked. Tonight. My jet is being fueled. We'll have 20 men. They'll have similar numbers. We meet in their warehouse, under their terms. Why? Kyung-ho's smile was predatory. Because confident men make mistakes. I only need them to make one. He pulled a silver pistol from his waistband, checked the magazine, and set it between them. This might get violent. The White Crane doesn't play by civilized rules. I know who you are, Zolani said. I'm not afraid. I'm afraid, Kyung-ho murmured. Of losing you. Zolani took his hand. Then I'll be your anchor. Your reminder that you're still human. Kyung-ho squeezed her hand. The war just moved to America, didn't it? Zolani asked. Kyung-ho nodded, pulling her close as Chicago blurred past. Get ready, he said. It's going to be a long night in Detroit. 1 week later, Zolani stood in the penthouse overlooking Chicago. The news played softly. Bartholomew Henderson's bankruptcy filing, Heather's viral apology. Detroit had happened. The White Crane meeting. 3 lieutenants had disappeared. The message was received. Chicago belonged to Park Kyung-ho. She touched her engagement ring. Her phone buzzed. Another interview request. The 5th this week. She declined. Her story wasn't for sale. You're up early, Kyung-ho said from the doorway. Couldn't stop thinking. About? What comes next? I can't just be your fiancé. I need purpose. What do you want? A foundation, Phoenix Rising, for single mothers abandoned during pregnancy. Housing, healthcare, job training, everything I didn't have. Kyung-ho's expression softened. How much do you need? 10 million to start. You'll have 20, and office space, legal support, whatever you need. I want to use my real story. No hiding. I want women to know survival is possible. You're not afraid of your past being public? I'm not afraid anymore. Heather tried to make me small, but reminded me how far I've come. Marcus stole my money and baby, but not my strength. I survived. I found you. Now I'll help other women do the same. She turned in his arms. A year ago, I slept in my car 3 blocks from here. Now I own the building. You never tried to save me. You just loved me while I saved myself. Kyung-ho kissed her. Every woman who walks through Phoenix Rising's doors will know she's not trash. She's a queen. Exactly. Her phone buzzed. A message from Heather. I'm sorry, I mean it. I've started therapy. Zolani deleted it. She didn't need Heather's redemption. Do you ever think about Marcus? Kyung-ho asked. No. When I think of the past, I feel nothing, just free. She watched the sun climb over Chicago. Somewhere in this city, a woman slept in her car. Somewhere, a mother chose between rent and food. Soon, they'd have somewhere to go. Phoenix Rising. I love you, Kyung-ho murmured. I love you too. Now let's go change the world. If you made it to the end of Zolani and Kyung-ho's story, thank you so much for watching. Now here's where I need you to be honest with me. Hit that like button. And if you still haven't subscribed to my Afro-Korean boss stories, drop a comment right now telling me why. What's holding you back? Is it the algorithm? Did you forget? I genuinely want to know. And for those who are subscribed, comment below. What should our next story be? Do you want more Korean mafia boss protection stories? More revenge tales? More unlikely love stories? I'm taking requests. Oh, and here's a teaser. Next week's story involves a Nigerian doctor who gets humiliated at a luxury hospital, only for her chaebol husband to buy the entire hospital chain the next day. You do not want to miss that level of petty revenge. See you in the next story, and remember, never underestimate the quiet ones. They might just be queens in disguise.